I got fired on Monday. By Thursday, I was bribed out of my own apartment for exactly $1,000. The chilling part was not sleeping in my car. But knowing who slid that envelope to my landlord, my family thinks they taught me a lesson in growing up, but they do not realize I just found the key to lock them out of their own lives. This isn't anger, it is simply the paperwork my grandmother left behind. My name is Bella Brooks, and for exactly 3 years, 4 months, and 12 days, I was a functioning member of society. I was 28 years old, a customer support specialist at Copperline Cloud, a mid-tier SaaS company in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a dental plan. I had a 401k that I barely contributed to but felt proud of owning. I had a designated parking spot. Then came Monday. It did not happen with a scream or a dramatic security escort. It happened with a calendar invite titled Department Sync that appeared at 9 in the morning for a meeting at 9:15. When I logged in, the camera of the HR director was off. Her voice was steady, rehearsed, and utterly devoid of humanity. She used words like restructuring, operational pivot, and redundancy. She never used the word fired. She never used the word help. By 10 o'clock, my access to the Slack channel was revoked. By 10:30, my email password no longer worked. I stood at my desk, the hum of the server room vibrating through the floorboards, holding a cardboard box that contained a chipped mug, a stapler I had stolen from the supply closet, and a half-dead succulent. That plant was the only living thing in the building that depended on me. Taking it felt like an act of defiance. It was the only dignity I could carry out past the receptionist who refused to make eye contact with me. The drive back to my apartment felt surreal. The radio was playing upbeat pop music, mocking the silence in my head. I parked my Honda, which was 5 years past its prime, and making a rattling sound I could not afford to investigate. And I sat there for a long time. I stared at the brick facade of the building I called home. It was not much. A second-floor walk-up with faulty plumbing and a landlord who smelled perpetually of stale tobacco. But it was mine, or so I thought. I made the call I had been dreading. I called home. "Mom," I said, my voice cracking before I could even get the sentence out. "They let me go. A mass layoff. I don't have severance." I waited for the sympathy. I waited for the offer to come home, to sleep in my old bedroom in Savannah until I got back on my feet. Instead, there was a pause that lasted 3 seconds too long. "Bella," she said, and her tone was not warm. It was the tone she used when I forgot to empty the dishwasher as a teenager. "Your father and I were just talking about this. You are nearly 30. We cannot be your safety net forever. This is just a stumble. Consider it a push to grow up." "I don't need a push," I argued, gripping the steering wheel. "I need a place to sleep for a week while I figure out unemployment." "Figure it out there," she said, and the line clicked dead. I sat in the car, stunned, but I told myself it was fine. I had paid rent through the end of the month. I had 3 weeks to find a gig, sell some clothes, maybe drive for a delivery app. I could survive this. 2 days later, on Wednesday evening, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Mr. Halverson standing there. He was a man who usually avoided his tenants unless he was collecting a check, but tonight he was shifting his weight from foot to foot, looking anywhere but at my face. He looked at the peeling paint on the door frame. He looked at the hallway carpet. "I need the apartment back." "Bella," he said. I blinked. "What?" "My lease runs until August. I paid rent." "I am breaking the lease," he muttered, finally glancing at me with eyes that were wet with shame or perhaps just allergies. "I will refund your deposit, and the rest of this month, but you have to be out by tomorrow night." "You can't do that," I said, my voice rising. "It is illegal. You have to give me 30 days' notice. Minimum." He reached into his pocket and pulled out an envelope. It was thick. "Look, I don't want trouble, but an offer was made. A cash offer to terminate the unit's contract immediately so it can be renovated." "Who?" I demanded. "Who makes an offer on this dump in the middle of the month?" He hesitated. "She said she was doing you a favor. She said you needed motivation. My stomach dropped so hard it felt like it hit the floorboards. She? Your sister. Mr. Halverson whispered. She gave me $1,000 cash on top of the lease break fee. She said to tell you that tough love is the only love that works. $1,000. The number echoed in my head. My sister, Brielle, had not just refused to help me. She had actively paid $1,000 to make me homeless. She had bribed my landlord to kick me onto the street. I slammed the door and dialed her number. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. She answered on the first ring. I was wondering when you would call. Are you insane? I screamed. You paid him? You paid Halverson to evict me? I just lost my job. Brielle. Exactly, Brielle said. Her voice was smooth, polished, the voice of a woman who worked in high-end real estate and never had a hair out of place. You are comfortable, Bella. You are stagnant. You sit in that mediocre job and that mediocre apartment and you drift. Mom and Dad agreed. You need a rock bottom to bounce back from. We are giving you that rock bottom. You made me homeless, I choked out. This isn't tough love. This is cruelty. Oh, stop being dramatic, my mother's voice chimed in. They were on speakerphone. They were all there together, probably sitting in the sunroom in Savannah, drinking iced tea while they orchestrated the destruction of my life. We are not supporting a failure, Bella. Sink or swim. We are betting you will swim if you have no choice. And if I drown? I asked. Then you weren't meant for the deep end, my father said. I hung up. I did not scream. I did not throw the phone. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, freezing the tears before they could fall. That night, the packing was not organized. I did not have boxes. I had black garbage bags. I swept my life into them, my clothes, my toiletries, the few books I loved. I left the furniture. I left the bed. I took the succulent. By Thursday evening, I was sitting in the driver's seat of my Honda Civic in the back corner of a 24-hour supermarket parking lot. The car was packed to the roof with trash bags. The passenger seat was occupied by my monitor and the plant. It was cold, the kind of damp, seeping cold that gets into your bones. I cracked the window an inch to keep the air flowing, but it let in the sound of rattling shopping carts being pushed by the night crew. It sounded like metal skeletons grinding their teeth. I checked my bank account on my phone. $387. That was it. That was the sum total of my existence. I reclined the seat as far back as it would go. The parking lot lights were oppressive, buzzing with a sickly yellow hue. I watched a family walk out of the store. A mom, a dad, 2 kids. They were laughing. They were loading groceries into a minivan. They looked so normal. My family thought they were writing a success story for me. They thought this was the opening chapter of my inspirational memoir, where I pulled myself up by my bootstraps. They thought $1,000 was a small price to pay to fix me. I closed my eyes, but I did not sleep. In my mind, I saw a scene that hadn't happened yet. I saw a morning in the not-so-distant future. I saw the sun rising over this same car. But I wasn't the one shivering. I saw my mother, my father, and Brielle standing outside my window. Their faces were not smug. They were pale. They were terrified. They were knocking on the glass, begging me to roll it down, begging me to listen. They thought $1,000 was enough to delete me from their lives, to reset the board, but they had no idea what they had just done. They had just paid to activate the one thing they had spent 20 years hiding, and I was going to make sure they got their money's worth. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber and lukewarm water, but it cost $2.15, which was the price of admission for a power outlet and a wireless internet connection. I sat in the corner of a 24-hour diner that smelled of bacon grease and sanitizer, nursing the small paper cup as if it were precious nectar. My laptop was plugged into the wall, the battery icon charging sluggishly, a lifeline that felt more critical than my own pulse. I logged into my bank application. The number on the screen was not just low, it was terrifying. $387.14. That was it. That was the sum total of my safety net. I took a napkin and a pen I had found in my glove compartment and started doing the math. It was the kind of arithmetic that makes your chest tight. A tank of gas for the Honda was $40. My car insurance, which was due in 6 days, was $112. My phone bill was $80. If I ate nothing but instant noodles and slept in the back seat for the next month, I might stretch it for 3 weeks, maybe 4. For the first time, the word homeless stopped being a punchline or a distant fear. It was a mathematical certainty. The world outside the window was moving on. Cars were rushing to offices. People were walking dogs. The machinery of society was humming along, completely indifferent to the fact that I had fallen out of the gears. My phone buzzed on the table. It was the family group chat. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the glass. Part of me wanted to throw the device across the room. Part of me needed to see it, like pressing on a bruise to check if it still hurt. Brielle had sent a photo. It was a close-up of a mimosa glass held against a backdrop of turquoise water and white sand. She was at a resort in Hilton Head. The caption read, "Simply, resetting, much-needed self-care." My father replied instantly, "Enjoy it, honey, you earned it." Then, immediately after, he posted a link to a listing for a commercial van, followed by a message. "Big things coming for the tour company. This is the year we finally break through." My mother chimed in, "Do you think the beige linen dress is too formal for the beach dinner? Or should I go with the floral?" I scrolled up. I scrolled down. There was not a single message asking where I was. There was no question about whether I had found a place to sleep. There was no concern about whether I had eaten. It was as if I had simply ceased to exist the moment I stopped serving a purpose. They were not worried. They were relieved. They felt they had done their duty by paying a stranger $1,000 to toss me into the cold. And now they could go back to discussing linen dresses and imaginary business empires. I put the phone down, face down. The anger that had been burning in my gut suddenly cooled into something else. It felt like grief. Not for the relationship I had lost, but for the one I never really had. Then I thought of Grandma Evelyn. She had been gone for 4 years, but in that diner booth, I could almost smell her perfume, lavender and old paper. She was the only person in the Brooks family who ever looked at me and saw a person, not a resource. I remembered the last month of her life. She had been bedridden, her lungs failing, her body shrinking into the mattress. I was 24 then. I had used all my vacation days, then taken unpaid leave, to drive down to Savannah and sit with her. I changed her sheets. I spoon-fed her broth when her hands were too shaky to hold the spoon. I read to her until my voice was hoarse. Brielle had visited exactly twice, once to ask if Grandma still had her pearl necklace, and once to bring a bouquet of expensive lilies that Grandma was allergic to. I remembered Brielle standing in the doorway, checking her watch, looking at the dying woman in the bed with a mixture of pity and impatience. One afternoon, when the morphine had worn off and Grandma was lucid, she had grabbed my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "Don't let them walk on you, Bella," she had wheezed. "They will try to use you as a rug to keep their own feet clean. Don't you let them—" I had brushed it off then, thinking it was just the fever talking. I thought we were a family. I thought families helped each other. I remembered her funeral. It had been raining. A cliché, but true. My parents had cried loudly, performing their grief for the neighbors. Brielle had worn a black dress that looked like it belonged on a runway and accepted condolences with the grace of a grieving widow. I had stood in the back, numb, unable to shed a tear because I had done all my crying while changing her bedpans, after the service, as people were filing out to the reception to eat ham sandwiches. A man in a gray suit had approached me. He was older, with silver hair and eyes that seemed to be measuring me. "Isabella?" he had asked. "Bella." I had corrected automatically. "I am Noah Kendrick," he said. "I was your grandmother's attorney. I handled her estate planning. At the time, I was exhausted. I just wanted to go home and sleep for a week." I nodded politely. He had handed me a business card. It was heavy, cream-colored cardstock. "Call me if you ever need anything," he had said, "or if things get complicated." I had taken the card, shoved it into my wallet, and forgotten about it. My parents had told me later that Grandma left everything to the family trust to be managed by Dad, and I had no reason to doubt them. Why would I? I grabbed my purse. My hands were shaking again, but this time, it was not from cold. I dumped the contents onto the sticky table. Receipts, gum wrappers, loose change, lip balm. I dug into the deepest pocket of my wallet, behind the expired library card and the punch card for a sandwich shop that went out of business 2 years ago, and there it was. The edges were soft and worn. The cream color had faded to a dull yellow, but the text was still legible. Noah Kendrick, attorney at law, Savannah, Georgia. I stared at the card, then I looked at my phone, where the family chat was still buzzing with notifications about my sister's vacation. Something inside me shifted. The tears that had been threatening to spill over receded. I picked up the pen again. I did not call the lawyer immediately. Instead, I opened a new notebook page on my laptop. I titled it simply, The Ledger. I started writing. I wrote down the date and time Mr. Halverson came to my door. I wrote down the exact words he used. She gave me $1,000 cash. I wrote down the date of the layoff. I wrote down every single thing I could remember about the loan my father asked me to co-sign when I was 20. The one he said was just a formality. I opened my email and started searching for old threads, downloading bank statements, taking screenshots of the group chat where they admitted to the scheme. I was no longer just a fired support specialist living in her car. I was a woman building a case. My sister thought she had paid $1,000 to teach me a lesson about the real world. She was right. She taught me that in the real world, you do not get mad, you get evidence. I looked at the lawyer's card one more time. If things get complicated, I tapped the card against the table. They wanted to talk about debts? They wanted to talk about who owed what to whom? Fine. I would embrace the transaction. I looked at the $1,000 bribe not as a defeat, but as an invoice, and I was going to collect the balance with interest. I picked up my phone and dialed the number on the card. The phone rang twice before a deep, gravelly voice answered. Noah Kendrick. Mr. Kendrick, I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts to steady it. This is Bella Brooks, Evelyn Brooks's granddaughter. You gave me your card 4 years ago. There was a pause, the sound of a chair shifting, and then a distinct change in his tone. Isabella, I have been wondering when you would call. Your grandmother spoke of you often in her final weeks. I am in trouble, I said. I did not sugarcoat it. I did not have the energy for pleasantries. I lost my job on Monday, and today, my landlord kicked me out because my sister paid him $1,000 to break my lease. I am currently living in my car. The silence on the other end was heavy, but it was not the awkward silence of pity. It was the calculating silence of a man arranging pieces on a chessboard. Where are you now? He asked. Charlotte, I replied. Can you get to Savannah? He asked. There are documents you need to see. Documents that your father and sister have conveniently forgotten to mention. I can be there in 4 hours, I said. I drove south on the interstate with a singular focus that bordered on trance. I did not listen to music. I did not stop for food. I watched the pine trees blur past, fueled by a mixture of adrenaline and a strange, cold curiosity. When I pulled up to Noah Kendrick's office, located in a restored Victorian house on the edge of the historic district, the sun was just beginning to set, casting long, sharp shadows across the porch. Noah was waiting for me. He looked exactly as I remembered, perhaps a little grayer, but his eyes were sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. He ushered me into an office that smelled of mahogany and old paper. Pointing to a leather chair opposite his massive desk, he did not offer me tea or sympathy. He offered me a file folder. Let us start with the assets Evelyn left behind, Noah said. Opening the folder, he spun a document around so it faced me. It was a deed. I don't understand, I said, rubbing my eyes. Mom and Dad said Grandma left everything to the family trust. Dad manages it. Your father manages his own delusions, Noah said, his voice dry. Evelyn was very specific. She knew your father has a tendency to spend money he does not have to impress people he does not like. She bypassed him completely. He tapped the paper with a manicured finger. The duplex on East 37th Street, the one your parents are currently living in. Who do you think owns it? They do, I said. They moved in right after the funeral. They said they were taking care of it for the family. Incorrect, Noah said. You own it, Bella. You are the sole beneficiary of that property. Your name is on the deed. It has been on the deed for 4 years. I felt the air leave my lungs. Me? But I have been paying the property taxes on it for the last 2 years. Dad said the trust was illiquid, and they needed help keeping the family home afloat. I sent them $6,000 last year alone. Noah stopped moving. He looked at me over the top of his glasses, and for the first time, I saw genuine anger in his eyes. It was a terrifying look. You paid the taxes, he repeated slowly. On your own house, while they lived in it rent-free. Yes. And while they paid your current landlord to evict you from an apartment you actually paid for. Yes. Noah closed his eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply through his nose. When he opened them, he was all business. Isabella, your parents are not owners. They are tenants at will, guests who serve at the pleasure of the owner, and based on what you just told me, they have been exploiting that pleasure fraudulently. He flipped to another page in the file. But that is not all. Evelyn established a discretionary trust. I am the sole trustee. The funds are protected from your father's creditors and your sister's lifestyle. The terms state clearly that the funds are to be released for your education, health, or in the event of, and I quote, severe hardship or malicious displacement. I stared at him. Malicious displacement? Your grandmother was a wise woman, Noah said. She suspected there might come a day when you were pushed out. She wanted to make sure you had a landing pad. He leaned forward. Brielle paying your landlord to evict you? That is the definition of malicious displacement. It unlocks the trust. Bella. I sat back in the chair, my head spinning. I had spent the last 24 hours thinking I was a beggar, waiting for scraps. In reality, I was the landlord. My parents, who had called me a failure on the phone yesterday, were sleeping under a roof that I provided. What about the $1,000? I asked. Can we do anything about that? We certainly can, Noah said, pulling a yellow legal pad toward him. In North Carolina, what your landlord did is likely a violation of the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act, accepting a bribe to facilitate a constructive eviction without due process. We can sue him for damages. We can sue your sister for tortious interference with a contractual relationship. Tortious interference. I tested the words. They sounded heavy. They sounded like weapons. Wait, I said, a sudden cold spike of memory hitting me. There is something else. When I was 20, Dad made me co-sign something. He said it was to help build my credit score. It was for a business loan for his van company. I never saw the paperwork again, but recently I got a notification about a hard inquiry on my credit report. Noah's pen stopped moving. He looked up, his expression grim. We need to pull your full credit history immediately. If he has leveraged your name or the assets involved in the trust without my consent, he has crossed from familial manipulation into criminal fraud. He pushed a single sheet of paper toward me. It was an engagement letter, authorizing him to represent me in all matters regarding the estate and potential litigation against the parties involved. This is the switch, Bella, Noah said softly. You sign this, and we stop asking them for permission to exist. We start dictating terms. I will draft a notice to quit for the occupants of the Savannah duplex. We will not throw them out on the street tonight. We are not them. But we will give them the statutory 30 days to vacate the premises. I looked at the pen. I thought about the cold air in my car the night before. I thought about Brielle's laugh when she told me I needed to hit rock bottom. I thought about my mother telling me they wouldn't support a failure. They were right. They wouldn't support a failure. But they were about to find out that they had been living on the charity of the very person they tried to destroy. I picked up the pen. It felt heavy, solid, and real. Do it, I said. Send the notice. I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent, for the first time in days. The shaking in my hands stopped completely. I wasn't drifting anymore. I was steering. For the next 3 days. My Honda Civic was not just a vehicle or a bedroom. It was a mobile command unit. I slept in the back seat with my knees curled to my chest, waking up with cramps that radiated down my spine. But the moment the sun came up, I was operational. I had a routine. I brushed my teeth in the restroom of a gas station on the outskirts of town, washed my face with cold water to wake up my tired eyes, and then I drove to the public library downtown. I treated the library like an office. I arrived at 8 in the morning, claimed a corner desk near a power outlet, and set up my laptop. I did not look like a woman who had just been evicted. I wore my crispest button-down shirt, the one I used to wear for quarterly reviews, and I tied my hair back in a tight, severe bun. If anyone looked at me, they saw a freelancer or a student, not a casualty of family warfare. My task was simple. I was building a dossier. Noah had given me strict instructions. Document everything. He had said, "Memory is malleable. Digital footprints are not." I started with the family group chat. I did not just read the messages. I processed them. I took screenshots of every single exchange from the last week. I captured Brielle's photo of the resort. I captured my father's dismissive comments about my career. I captured the timestamp where my mother ignored my plea for housing to discuss linen dresses. I organized them into folders labeled by date and sender. Then I moved to the phone logs. I downloaded my carrier's history, highlighting the incoming calls from Mr. Halverson. Then came the hard part, the active reconnaissance. I put on my headphones and dialed Mr. Halverson's number. My phone lay on the desk, recording the audio through a secondary app Noah had vetted. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, meaning I did not need Mr. Halverson's permission to record our conversation. I just needed him to talk. He picked up on the third ring. Halverson. "Mr. Halverson, it is Bella Brooks," I said. My voice was level, devoid of the panic I had shown him in the hallway. "I am recording this call for my own records regarding the lease termination." "I don't have anything to say to you," he snapped, his voice tight. "You are moving out. That is the end of it." "I am already out," I lied smoothly. "But my lawyer needs clarification on the deposit return. You mentioned a specific arrangement regarding the lease break fee. You said a third party covered the costs." "I returned your deposit," he deflected. "The check is in the mail." "That is not what I asked," I pressed. I stared at the wood grain of the library desk, visualizing him sweating in his cramped office. "You stated on Tuesday evening that my sister, Brielle Brooks, provided you with cash to expedite my eviction. I need you to confirm the amount for my tax records." "I didn't say that," he stammered. "Mr. Halverson," I said, dropping my voice to a conspiratorial whisper, "if the IRS asks why there is a discrepancy in the rental income, I need to know, was it $1,000 or was it more?" "It was 1,000, he blurted out, clearly agitated. "Look, she gave me $1,000 cash to cover the vacancy and the hassle. It was a private deal. She said she was helping you. I don't want any trouble with the IRS." "Thank you," I said. That is all I needed. I hung up. I saved the file. I named it Halverson_confession_bribe.mp3 and uploaded it to the cloud. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. 5 minutes later, a text message popped up on my screen from Mr. Halverson. "If you keep this quiet, I can give you another week in the apartment. Off the books. Just don't mention the money to anyone." I stared at the message. He was trying to buy my silence with 7 days of shelter. He knew he had messed up. He knew accepting a bribe to constructively evict a tenant was illegal. I took a screenshot of the text. This was twist number 2. He thought he was offering an olive branch, but he had just handed me a smoking gun. This text proved he knew the transaction was shady. I forwarded everything to Noah. Across the state line in Savannah, Noah was moving his own pieces. He CC'd me on an email sent to Mr. Halverson's official business address. It was a formal demand letter requiring the legal justification for the immediate lease termination, a copy of the written agreement with the third party, and a citation of the specific North Carolina statutes regarding tenant rights. It ended with a sentence that probably made Halverson choke on his morning coffee. We are preparing a filing for wrongful eviction and seeking treble damages. At the same time, a certified letter was on its way to the duplex on East 37th Street. It was not a violent eviction notice. Noah was too smart for that. It was a notice to quit, informing the occupants, my parents, that the owner, Isabella Brooks, was terminating their tenancy at will arrangement and that they had 30 days to vacate the premises. It was polite, bureaucratic, and absolutely devastating. I took a break at noon to eat a protein bar I had bought at the gas station. While I chewed, I logged into a credit monitoring service. Noah had warned me about the hard inquiries on my report. I navigated to the inquiry section. My credit score, which I had painstakingly built up to 750, had taken a dip. There were 2 recent hard inquiries. One from a leasing company specializing in commercial vehicles, dated 3 weeks ago. Another from a small business lender, dated 4 days ago, the day I was fired. My stomach turned. My father wasn't just boasting about his van company in the group chat. He was actively trying to finance it, and he was using my social security number to do it. The memory of signing that formality paper when I was 20 came rushing back. He must have kept my information on file. Or perhaps I was still listed as a guarantor on a dormant account he was trying to reactivate. I downloaded the report, evidence. It was all just evidence now. By 6 p.m, the library was closing. The security guard, a kind older man who had seen me there for 3 days straight, gave me a sympathetic nod. "Time to pack up, miss." I packed my laptop. The dread of the car began to creep back in, the cold, the fear, the darkness. Then, my phone rang. It was Jules Harper. Jules and I had started at Copperline Cloud on the same day. She had left 6 months ago to work for a competitor. We hadn't spoken much since, but she had seen my LinkedIn status change to open to work. "Bella?" she asked. "I heard about the layoffs. Are you okay?" I wanted to say yes. I wanted to maintain the facade, but the exhaustion hit me all at once. "Honestly, Jules? No, I am not okay." I told her everything. Not the revenge plan, not the duplex, just the immediate facts. I was fired. I was evicted. I was sleeping in a Honda. "Get to my place," Jules said immediately. "I have a pull-out couch and a bottle of wine. Don't you dare sleep in that car tonight." Arriving at Jules's apartment felt like entering a sanctuary. It was warm. It smelled of garlic and oregano. She didn't ask too many questions. She just handed me a towel and pointed to the shower. Standing under the hot water, watching the grime of 3 days swirl down the drain, I felt something harden inside me. I wasn't just washing off the dirt. I was washing off the fear. Later that night, while Jules slept in her room, I sat on her couch with my laptop open. I pulled up the scan of the deed Noah had sent me. Warranty deed, grantor, Evelyn Brooks, grantee, Isabella Brooks. I zoomed in on the date. It was signed 4 years ago. I looked at the address. 1402 East 37th Street, Savannah, Georgia, for 4 years. My parents had hosted dinner parties in that house. They had hung their portraits on the walls. They had renovated the kitchen with money they likely guilted out of me. They had called it their legacy. My father had undoubtedly pointed to the roof and told his friends about the property he owned. Brielle had probably taken selfies on the porch, tagging them home sweet home. I traced my finger over my name on the screen. The house they were calling their own had never been theirs. They were squatters in a kingdom they thought they ruled. And they had made the fatal mistake of trying to exile the queen. I closed the laptop. The heist was not about stealing something from them. It was about taking back what they had stolen from me. The board was set. The pieces were moving, and for the first time in my life, I was the one holding the gavel. the first crack in their facade did not appear with a scream. It appeared with a phone call from a number I did not recognize. It was Friday morning. I was sitting at Jules's kitchen island, applying for a remote data entry job that paid $15 an hour. When my phone buzzed, I expected it to be a debt collector, or maybe Mr. Halverson trying to negotiate again. "Is this Bella Brooks?" a male voice barked. He sounded like he had been smoking a pack a day for 40 years. "Speaking," I said. "This is Rick. I am your father's partner at Low Country Van Company. We have a problem, and your dad is not picking up his phone, so I'm calling you." I stiffened. "I do not work for Low Country Van Company, Rick." "Yeah, well, you are wrecking it," he snapped. "We were 48 hours away from closing the financing on the new fleet. The bank just called. They froze the application. They said there is a flag on the primary collateral, the duplex on East 37th. My heart did a little flip. What about it? They said the title search came back with a discrepancy. They said your father listed it as his asset, but the deed is showing a lien or a dispute or some legal hold. Did you file something? Because if you killed this loan, you are killing the business." I almost laughed. It was a dark, hollow sound. "Rick, if the bank found a discrepancy, it is because my father tried to pledge a house he does not own as collateral for a loan he cannot afford. I suggest you ask him about that when he decides to answer his phone." I hung up. My hand was trembling, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity of it. My father had not just borrowed against my name in the past. He was actively trying to mortgage my future, my literal house, to fund his pipe dream. And now that Noah had filed the notice to quit, and perhaps placed a lis pendens or a similar notice on the property, the bank had caught the lie. 10 minutes later, my mother called. I let it ring 3 times before answering. I put it on speaker so Jules could hear. "Bella," my mother said. Her voice was soft, breathless. It was the voice she used when she wanted to smooth over a scene at a restaurant. "We need to meet, just to talk. No lawyers, just family. I am in Charlotte." "Mom," I said. "You are in Savannah." "I am in the car," she said. "I am driving up. I can be there in 2 hours. Remember when you were little, and you scraped your knee at the park? Who was the one who carried you all the way home?" "Me. We are family. Bella. Families fight, but they do not sue each other. They do not send eviction notices to their parents." "You are right," I said, cutting through her nostalgia. "Families do not send eviction notices, but families also do not bribe landlords $1,000 to throw their daughters onto the street in the middle of a layoff. You lost the right to play the childhood card the moment you paid for my homelessness." "We were trying to help you," she cried, the mask slipping for a second. "You were stagnating. We wanted you to find your fight." "Well, congratulations, Mom," I said coldly. "I found it." I ended the call. Jules looked at me over her coffee mug, her eyes wide. "That was brutal," she whispered. "That was necessary," I replied. But the real confrontation happened that afternoon. I had gone to the grocery store to buy ingredients for dinner, my way of thanking Jules. I was walking back to the Honda, balancing a paper bag on my hip, when a white Mercedes SUV swerved into the spot next to me, nearly clipping my bumper. The door flew open, and Brielle stepped out. She looked immaculate in a cream-colored pantsuit, her hair blown out to perfection, but her eyes were wild. She didn't look like a sister. She looked like a cornered animal wearing designer heels. "You need to stop this," she hissed, marching toward me. "Right now." I placed the grocery bag in my trunk and slammed it shut. "Hello to you too, Brielle. Do you have any idea what you are doing?" She waved a hand in the air. "I got an email from legal today. My company's legal department. They received a notice regarding a potential litigation involving unethical interference in a lease agreement. Why is my name on a lawyer's desk?" "Bella?" "Because you bribed my landlord," I said simply. "Actions. Meet consequences." "It was a personal transaction," she shouted, ignoring the people staring at us in the parking lot. It had nothing to do with my job. It has everything to do with your job, I shot back. You work for Luxhaven Property Group, don't you? A high-end real estate management firm. Tell me, Brielle, what does the Code of Ethics for a licensed property manager say about bribing other landlords to perform illegal evictions? I imagine it is a firing offense, maybe even a license-revoking one. Her face went pale. The makeup could not hide the sudden drain of color. I had hit the bullseye. She wasn't worried about me sleeping in a car. She was worried that her career, her image, her carefully curated life as a successful real estate professional was about to be dismantled by her own pettiness. She reached into her purse and pulled out a checkbook. Fine, she said, her hands shaking as she uncapped a pen. You want money? Is that it? I will write you a check right now. $1,000 to pay you back. I will add another $500 for your trouble. $1,500. Take it, sign a waiver, and call off your dog of a lawyer. She held the check out to me. The paper fluttered in the wind. I looked at the check. Then I looked at her. You really don't get it, I said quietly. You think this is about the money. You think you can just buy your way out of the hole you dug. It is always about money, she screamed. Don't act high and mighty. You are broke. You are unemployed. Take the check. No, I said. 2,000, she pleaded, desperation creeping into her voice. Bella, please, if Luxhaven finds out I was involved in a constructive eviction suit, they will terminate me. I just got the senior manager title. I have a mortgage. I have a reputation. You should have thought about that before you handed Mr. Halverson that envelope, I said. You wanted to teach me a lesson about the real world? Here it is. In the real world, you cannot pay people to disappear just because they are inconvenient. I got into my car and locked the door. She stood there, banging on the window, mouthing the word, please, but I started the engine. I backed out, leaving her standing in the exhaust fumes of the car she had forced me to live in. I drove a few blocks and pulled over to call Noah. I recounted the conversation, my heart racing. She offered $2,000, I told him, and she confirmed she works for Luxhaven. Do not take the money, Noah said sharply. The moment you take a dime, it becomes a settlement. It implies you have been made whole. You are not whole. Isabella, we are just getting started. I didn't take it, I said. But Noah, she looked terrified, not because she hurt me, but because she got caught. That is how it usually works with narcissists, Noah said, his voice calm and grounding. They never regret the action. They only regret the exposure. Listen to me closely. Do not threaten her with her job. Do not say, I will get you fired. That is blackmail. We do not blackmail. We simply pursue your legal rights. If her employer finds out because of a public court filing, that is a consequence of her choices, not your malice. We present choices and consequences, nothing else. She said Dad's loan got denied, I added. Good, Noah said. That means the system is working. The notice to quit has been delivered to the duplex. The clock is ticking on their tenancy. They are beginning to realize that the ground they are standing on belongs to you. I hung up and looked at the groceries in the passenger seat. I had bought a cheap bottle of wine to share with Jules. For years, I had thought my family was a fortress, and I was just the guest standing outside the gate. I realize now that I was wrong. I was not the guest. I was the foundation. I was the one who cared for Grandma. I was the one who paid the taxes. I was the one whose credit score they cannibalized. They had spent so much time trying to push me down that they forgot I was the only thing holding them up. And now that I had stepped away, the whole structure was starting to collapse. The notification arrived on Saturday morning, vibrating against the plywood table of the public library where I had set up my temporary command center. It was not a text from my family, nor was it an email from a recruiter. It was an alert from the credit monitoring service I had activated just 48 hours prior. New hard inquiry. Detected. Low country commercial lending. I clicked the link. My pulse quickening. The details populated the screen. A loan application had been submitted yesterday for the purchase of a 2024 Ford Transit passenger van. The applicant was my father's company. The co-signer was me. I stared at the screen, and suddenly, I was 20 years old again. I remembered sitting at the kitchen table in the duplex on East 37th Street. My father had been smiling, that wide, charismatic smile he used when he was selling a tour package. He had slid a stack of papers toward me. "It is just to help you build your credit history." "Bella," he had said, handing me a pen, "you have no credit score. This is a small line of credit for the business. I pay it, but your score goes up. It is a win-win. Trust me." I had trusted him. I had signed where he pointed, believing I was being a good daughter, believing he was looking out for my financial future. I had never seen a statement. I had never seen a bill. I assumed the account was closed years ago, but looking at the screen now, I realized the account had never been closed. It had been kept open, a silent line of credit attached to my Social Security number, lurking in the background like a dormant virus. And now, desperate for cash because the bank had flagged the house, he was trying to max it out. I called Noah immediately. "He is trying to buy a van in my name," I said the moment he picked up. "The alert just came through. Low country commercial lending." "I see it," Noah said. The sound of typing clattered in the background. "I pulled your full report this morning. It is worse than just a van. Isabella, send me the screenshots of what you are seeing." I forwarded the alert. "What do you mean it is worse?" "I have been reviewing the financial disclosures associated with your grandmother's estate and the unauthorized filings your father has made," Noah said, his voice dropping into that cold, analytical register that made me feel safe. "Your father has been listing the duplex as a primary asset on his personal financial statements for years. He uses the equity he does not have, to secure favorable interest rates for his business loans. He has been defrauding these lenders by claiming ownership of a property that belongs to you." "But the bank caught him this time," I said. "Rick called me. He said there was a flag." "They caught him because I filed a caveat against the title 2 days ago," Noah explained. "The bank ran a title search, saw my legal filing, and realized his collateral was vapor. That is why the loan froze. But here's the part that concerns me. Look at the document I just emailed you." I opened the attachment. It was a PDF of a loan modification agreement, dated 6 months ago. It was an extension of the original line of credit I had signed for when I was 20. "Scroll to the bottom," Noah instructed. I scrolled. There were 2 signature lines, one for my father and one for the guarantor, Isabella Brooks. I stared at the ink. I zoomed in until the pixels blurred. "That is not my signature," I whispered. "My handwriting is jagged, a result of gripping the pen too tight. My B's are narrow." The signature on the screen was looped, fluid, and slanted to the right. It looked elegant. "It looks like Brielle's handwriting," I said, a wave of nausea rolling over me. "Or maybe Mom's. Mom writes like that." "It does not matter whose hand held the pen," Noah said grimly. "What matters is that it was not yours. Someone in that house forged your signature to extend a liability in your name without your consent. This is not just bad family dynamics. Bella, this is forgery. This is identity theft. This is a felony." I closed my laptop, feeling suddenly unable to breathe. The betrayal of the eviction had been a slap in the face. This was a knife in the back. They hadn't just kicked me out. They had been harvesting me. To them, I wasn't a person. I was a credit score. I was a backup generator they could plug into whenever their own power failed, without ever asking if I had enough energy to survive. "What do we do?" I asked. My voice sounded small in the quiet library. "We go nuclear on defense," Noah said. "Right now, you are going to log into every single credit bureau, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, and you are going to place a total freeze on your reports. No one opens a lemonade stand in your name without a PIN code that only you possess." "Okay," I said, opening new tabs in my browser. "Next," Noah continued, "you are going to change every password you have, banking, email, social media. If they have your social security number, they might have the answers to your security questions. Mother's maiden name? Change the answer. Make it up. Make the answer Godzilla. It does not matter, as long as they do not know it. And the signature? I asked. The forgery? I am drafting a notice of dispute, Noah said. We will send it to the lender, stating formally that the signature is a forgery and that you contest the debt. We will demand a copy of the original wet ink document for forensic analysis. When the lender realizes they are holding a fraudulent guarantee, they will not just deny the loan, they will open an internal fraud investigation against the applicant. That means your father. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the trackpad. Bella? Noah said, sensing the pause. If we do that, I said slowly, if we prove fraud, he could go to jail, couldn't he? It is a possibility, Noah admitted. Banks do not take kindly to being lied to, but that is not your burden to carry. You did not commit the crime. You are simply refusing to be the victim of it. I looked out the window. A woman was walking a golden retriever on the sidewalk. It looked so peaceful. I wondered if she had to worry about her father stealing her identity to buy a van. I don't want to destroy them, I said. I just want to be free of them. I don't want to see my dad in handcuffs. Noah, I just want him out of my wallet. Then we use this, Noah said. We do not file a police report today. We file the dispute with the bank to protect your credit, which is your right. The bank will pressure him. We let the pressure build. We use the existence of this forgery as the leverage to force them to sign a complete release, a document stating you owe them nothing, that they have no claim on the duplex, and that they will never use your name again. We offer them a lifeboat. The lifeboat is, sign this, leave Bella alone, vacate the house, and we won't hand this PDF to the district attorney. It was a cold calculation. It was leverage, but it was the only language they seemed to understand. Okay, I said. Let's do it. I spent the next 2 hours locking down my digital life. I froze my credit. I changed my passwords to strings of random characters that I wrote down in a physical notebook. I called my own bank and set up 2-factor authentication. I built a wall around my identity, brick by brick. When I was done, I felt exhausted, but also strangely light. I was no longer accessible. For 28 years, I had been an open door for them. I had been the good daughter, the reliable sister, the safety net. I had let them walk in and take whatever they needed. My time, my energy, my money, my name. I picked up my phone. The family group chat was still active. My mother had posted a passive-aggressive quote about forgiveness. Brielle had liked it. My father was silent, probably panicking about the frozen loan. I typed a message. I did not explain. I did not justify. I did not ask for an apology. From today, everything concerning me, my finances, my property, and my legal standing must go through my attorney. Noah Kendrick, do not contact me directly. I hit send. Then I left the group. I watched the chat disappear from my list. It was done. I had cut the cord. I was alone in a library, unemployed, and technically homeless. But for the first time in my life, I belonged entirely to myself. The drive to Savannah took 4 hours, but it felt like traveling through a time warp. I watched the landscape shift from the red clay and pine trees of the Piedmont to the flat, marshy low country where the air hung heavy with humidity and the smell of salt water. I gripped the steering wheel of my Honda until my knuckles turned white. I was not going home to visit. I was going to inspect an asset. For years, I had convinced myself that letting my parents live in the duplex on East 37th Street was an act of filial duty. I told myself that because I was single, because I was working in Charlotte, because I was easy. It made sense for them to stay there. I paid the taxes quietly. I paid the insurance. I let them play house in a property my grandmother had explicitly left to me because she knew they would squander it. And how had they repaid that generosity? By bribing a stranger to throw me out of my own apartment 300 miles away. The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. I had provided them with a roof while they paid for my gutter. I turned onto the street. The live oaks draped with Spanish moss cast long, dappled shadows on the pavement. I slowed down as I approached number 1402. I slammed on the brakes. There was a truck in the driveway. Not a moving truck for them, but a staging van, and stuck into the lawn, right next to the hydrangea bush I had planted with Grandma 10 years ago, was a sleek, modern sign for lease, luxury unit, showing today, contact Lux Haven, property group. They were not just living there, they were trying to rent it out. I parked my car behind the van. Blocking it in, I grabbed my bag, which contained the folder Noah had prepared for me, and marched up the steps. The front door was wide open. The smell hit me first. It didn't smell like Grandma's house anymore. The scent of old books and lavender was gone, replaced by a chemical citrus air freshener that stung my nose. I stepped into the foyer. The house had been sterilized. Grandma's antique coat rack was gone. The Persian rug was gone. In the living room, her velvet armchair, the one she sat in to read me stories, had been replaced by a generic, beige mid-century modern sofa that looked like it came from a catalog. There were abstract paintings on the walls where her family photos used to hang. They had erased her. "Move that plant to the corner," a voice commanded. I walked into the living room. My father was standing there, holding a stack of brochures. My mother was adjusting a throw blanket on the beige sofa. "What?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. "Is going on here?" My father spun around. For a second, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. Then, his face hardened into that familiar mask of paternal authority. "Bella," he said, stepping forward as if to block my view of the room. "We did not expect you. You should have called." "I asked you a question," I said, pointing to the window and the sign outside. "Why is there a for lease sign in the yard of my house?" "We are generating liquidity," he said, using the business buzzwords he loved so much. "The tour company needs a bridge loan. Since the bank is being difficult about the financing, we decided to lease out the upper unit and consolidate downstairs. It is just smart asset management." "Asset management," I repeated. "You are trying to lease a property you do not own to pay for a business that is failing." "It is family property," he shouted, his face turning red. "I am your father. I have taken care of this place for 4 years. I have rights." "You have 0 rights," I said. I pulled the photocopy of the deed from my bag and slapped it onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy thud. "Read it. Dad, grantee, Isabella Brooks, not the Brooks family, not Robert Brooks, me. You are here because I allowed it." "And now you are trying to act as the landlord?" "Bella, please," my mother said, walking over with her hands clasped. She looked tired, her eyes darting between me and the door. "Don't make a scene. We have a prospective tenant coming in 20 minutes, a young doctor. He is willing to pay $2,500 a month. That money could help all of us. We could help you with your situation." "My situation?" I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "You mean the homelessness you paid for? You think you can fix that by selling off pieces of my inheritance?" Before she could answer, the sound of heels clicking on the hardwood floor echoed from the hallway. "I thought I heard shouting," Brielle said. She walked in, looking every inch the professional agent. She was holding a clipboard. Beside her was a woman in a blazer who I assumed was a fellow broker, or perhaps the staging coordinator. Brielle stopped when she saw me. Her eyes narrowed. "What are you doing here? I have a client arriving at 4 o'clock. "You are showing my house, Brielle?" I asked. "Does your brokerage know you are listing a property without the owner's consent? That is called fraud." Brielle turned to the woman beside her and forced a tight, fake smile. "Excuse us, Sarah. My sister is going through a bit of a mental health crisis. She just lost her job and she is confused. Can you give us a moment?" "I am not confused," I said, stepping past my father to face Brielle. "And I am not unstable. I am the legal owner of this building, and I am telling you right now, there will be no showing. You are ruining everything, Brielle hissed, dropping the professional act. We need this deposit. Do you want Mom and Dad to starve? Is that it? You are so selfish. You always have been. Hoarding Grandma's favor. Hoarding the inheritance. I took care of her, I said quietly. While you were at brunch, I turned to my father. Noah sent you the notice to quit via certified mail yesterday. Did you get it? He didn't answer. He just glared at me, his fists clenched at his sides. That notice gives you 30 days to vacate, I said. But this? I gestured to the staged room. This unauthorized commercial activity ends now. I walked to the front door. The staging van was still parked outside. I looked at the lock. It was a smart lock. One of those keypads Brielle had probably installed to make showings easier. I took out my phone. Noah had anticipated this. He had advised me to secure my property. I had called a locksmith on the way into town. He was pulling up to the curb right now. His van marked Savannah Secure Lock Key. What are you doing? My mother asked, following me to the porch. I am changing the locks on the vacant unit, I said. And I am removing the smart lock on the front door. You have keys to your unit downstairs. You can keep those for 30 days. But the rest of the house? It is closed for business. The locksmith walked up the path, tool belt clinking. Miss Brooks? Yes, I said. Please change the front entry and the upper unit. Bill it to me. You can't do this, Brielle shrieked from the doorway. I have a contract with the tenant. I took a holding deposit. Then you better write them a refund check, I said without looking at her, and maybe add a little extra for their trouble. I hear you are good at paying people off. I stood on the porch while the locksmith worked. My family stood in the hallway, watching. They looked small. They looked furious. But they didn't look powerful anymore. They looked like people who had been caught trying to sell something that wasn't theirs. My mother stepped out onto the porch. She didn't look at the locksmith. She looked at me. Her eyes were wet, but her mouth was a thin, hard line. You are cruel, Bella, she whispered. We are your family. How can you be so cold? You are throwing your own flesh and blood to the wolves. I looked at her. I looked at the woman who had sat silently on the phone while my sister laughed about my eviction. I looked at the woman who cared more about a linen dress than her daughter's shelter. I am not throwing you to the wolves, Mom, I said softly. I am just taking back the house. You are the ones who invited the wolves in when you decided money was more important than loyalty. It is heartless, she spat. No, I said, watching the locksmith drive the final screw into the new deadbolt. It feels heartless to you because for the first time in your life, you are the one paying the price. You call it cruel because I stopped being your cushion, but I am done being the thing you step on to keep your feet clean. The locksmith handed me the new keys. They were shiny and cold. I put one in my pocket and held the other one out to my father, who was lurking in the doorway. This opens the front gate, I said. You have 30 days. If I see another for lease sign, or if I find out you have tried to show this place again, Noah will file for an immediate emergency eviction order. Do we understand each other? My father snatched the key from my hand. He didn't say a word. He just slammed the door in my face. I stood on the porch alone. The for lease sign was still in the yard. I walked over, pulled it out of the soft earth, and laid it face down in the grass. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the street. I was tired. I was hungry. But as I walked back to my car, I didn't feel heavy. I felt like the house behind me, standing on my own foundation, finally cleared of the rot that had been eating away at the beams. The summons arrived at the cheap motel where I was staying in Savannah, delivered by a deputy who looked like he would rather be anywhere else. It was a temporary protective order, filed by Brielle Brooks against Isabella Brooks. The allegations were listed in neat, terrifying print: trespassing, harassment, verbal threats of physical violence. Brielle was not just trying to keep the house, she was trying to criminalize my presence. She knew she could not win a property dispute, so she had shifted the battlefield to criminal court. She was betting that a judge would see a crying, well-dressed professional and a homeless, unstable sister, and rule on sentiment rather than fact. She was wrong. The hearing was set for Tuesday morning at the Chatham County Magistrate Court. I walked in wearing the same suit I had worn to the library, carrying a binder that Noah and I had spent the last 48 hours organizing. I did not look at my parents, who were sitting in the back row like a silent Greek chorus of disapproval. I did not look at Brielle, who was sitting at the plaintiff's table, dabbing at dry eyes with a tissue. When the magistrate called our names, Brielle stood up. She launched into a performance that was worthy of an Academy Award. "Your Honor," she said, her voice trembling just the right amount. "My sister is unstable. She lost her job. She has been living in her car. She came to my parents' home, our family home, and she was screaming. She threatened to burn the house down if we did not give her money. She shoved me in the driveway. I am terrified for my safety and the safety of our elderly parents." The magistrate, a stern woman with reading glasses perched on the end of her nose, looked at me. "Ms. Brooks, did you threaten to burn down the dwelling at 1402 East 37th Street?" "No, Your Honor," I said. My voice was steady. "I did not." "She is lying," Brielle interrupted, looking at the judge with wide, pleading eyes. "She is desperate. You have to understand. She has nothing left. She is lashing out." "Ms. Brooks," the magistrate said to Brielle, "please let the defendant speak." She turned back to me. "Do you have any response to the claim of trespassing?" "Yes, Your Honor," I said. I opened my binder. "I cannot trespass on a property that I own." I handed the bailiff the certified copy of the warranty deed. The magistrate took it, adjusted her glasses, and read it in silence. "This deed lists Isabella Brooks as the sole owner," the magistrate said, looking up at Brielle. "Ms. Brielle Brooks, are you the owner of this property?" "Well, no," Brielle stammered. "But my parents live there. It is the family home. She evicted them. She is abusing her power." "Eviction is a civil matter," the magistrate said dryly. "It is not grounds for a protective order. What about the threats of violence? You stated she shoved you and threatened arson." "She did," Brielle insisted. "It was in the driveway. No one else was there, but she got right in my face." "Actually, Your Honor," I said, flipping to the next tab in my binder. "Someone else was there, or rather, something else." I pulled out a flash drive. "My neighbor, Mrs. Higgins, lives directly across the street. She has a high-definition doorbell camera that faces our driveway. I spoke with her yesterday. She was kind enough to provide me with the footage of the entire interaction from Friday afternoon." Brielle froze. The tissue in her hand stopped moving. The magistrate accepted the drive and plugged it into her laptop. We all watched the screen. The video was clear. It showed me walking calmly to my car. It showed Brielle running out of the house, blocking my path, screaming at me, and banging on my car window while I sat inside with my hands on the wheel. At no point did I shove her. At no point did I open my mouth to threaten anyone. The video ended. The courtroom was silent. The magistrate took off her glasses. She looked at Brielle with a gaze that could have frozen boiling water. "Ms. Brielle Brooks," she said. "Perjury is a serious offense. Filing a false police report is a serious offense. Using the court system to gain leverage in a property dispute is an abuse of process." I felt threatened," Brielle whispered, her face draining of color. "The video shows you were the aggressor," the magistrate snapped. "Case dismissed, and let the record show that if I see another frivolous filing from this plaintiff against this defendant, I will consider sanctions." I walked out of the courthouse feeling a strange vibration in my chest. It wasn't triumph. It was relief. Brielle had tried to paint a picture of me as a monster, but the frame had broken. She couldn't just tell stories anymore. As I reached the steps outside, my phone rang. It was Noah. "How did it go?" he asked. "Dismissed," I said. "The video saved me." "Good," Noah said. "Because things are heating up on the Charlotte front. I just got off the phone with Mr. Halverson's attorney. Does he have a lawyer now? I asked. He does, Noah replied. And they are scared. Bella, they received our draft complaint regarding the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Act violation. They know that if we go to court, Halverson loses his rental license and he pays treble damages. They want to settle. What are they offering? I asked, leaning against a stone pillar. Full return of your deposit. Noah listed, plus $2,000 for relocation assistance, and they want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement, a full gag order. You cannot talk about the eviction, you cannot talk about the bribe, and you certainly cannot talk about Brielle's involvement. I laughed. $2,000 to shut up about the fact that they ruined my life? No. I told them that would be your answer, Noah said, sounding pleased. So, here is the counter move. I told them we are not interested in silence. We are interested in justice. I told them we are proceeding with the lawsuit unless they agree to our terms. $10,000 in damages for wrongful eviction, full coverage of my legal fees, and a written admission of fault signed by Mr. Halverson stating exactly why the lease was terminated. $10,000? I asked. He will never agree to that. He might, Noah said, because I sent them the screenshot. Which screenshot? The text message, Noah said. The one where he told you, I can give you another week if you keep quiet. In the eyes of the law. Bella, that is not a friendly offer. That is extortion. It is a landlord using the threat of immediate homelessness to coerce a tenant into concealing an illegal act. When his lawyer saw that text, the line went dead for a full minute. I looked out at the busy street. I thought about Mr. Halverson, the man who had looked at his shoes while he kicked me out. I thought about the text message he probably sent while watching TV, thinking he was being generous. He had no idea that he had handed me the shovel to dig his professional grave. Do not settle for the gag order, I told Noah. I want the admission of fault. I want it on paper that he took a bribe from Brielle Brooks. That is the goal, Noah agreed. If we get that admission, we have undeniable proof of Brielle's tortious interference. It closes the loop. It proves she didn't just give him money. She solicited an illegal act. I hung up the phone. Across the parking lot, I saw Brielle and my parents walking toward their car. They were arguing. My father was gesturing wildly. Brielle was looking down at her phone, typing furiously. They looked chaotic. They looked fractured. For years, they had controlled the narrative. Bella is the screw-up. Bella is the one who needs help. Bella is the one we have to carry. Today, in a sterile courtroom. That story had died. The truth was not flashy. It was boring. It was deeds, receipts, timestamps, and video files. And for the first time, I realized that the truth was the only weapon I needed. They could scream. They could cry. They could lie to the police, but they could not argue with a timestamp. I walked to my car. I had a lawsuit to win in Charlotte and a house to reclaim in Savannah. The game of pretend was over. The email from Juniper Desk did not arrive with a fanfare. It simply appeared in my inbox on a Tuesday afternoon while I was scraping cheap beige paint off the crown molding in the upstairs hallway. It was a job offer for a customer success lead position. It was fully remote. The salary was $65,000 a year, and the benefits package included a mental health stipend. I sat on the floor, covered in dust, and read the email 3 times. It was not a fortune. It was not a flashy executive title. But the hiring manager had written a personal note at the bottom, saying she was impressed by my resilience and problem-solving skills during the interview process. For the first time in weeks, I felt seen for my competence rather than my utility. I hit reply and typed one word, accepted. 2 days later, Noah Kendrick made a transfer from the trust my grandmother had established. He called it a stabilization disbursement. This is what she wanted. Isabella, Noah told me over the phone. She didn't want you to be rich. She wanted you to be safe. The money was not enough to buy a yacht, but it was enough to hire a plumber to fix the leaky pipes my father had ignored for 4 years. It was enough to buy high-quality paint to cover the sterile gray walls my mother had chosen. It was enough to buy a bed, a real bed with a headboard and fresh sheets that didn't smell like fear. I moved into the upper unit of the duplex. It was the smaller of the two, but it had the best light. I spent my evenings stripping the floors and restoring the original heart pine that my parents had covered with cheap laminate. With every layer I peeled back, I felt like I was excavating my own life. The downstairs unit, the one my parents had occupied, remained empty for now. I hired a cleaning crew to scrub it top to bottom, removing every trace of their lingering presence. I listed it for rent, but this time I did it properly. I vetted tenants, I checked references, I priced it fairly. I was turning the house from a family battleground into a functioning asset. Then came the check from Charlotte. Mr. Halverson had capitulated, faced with the prospect of a lawsuit that would expose his acceptance of a bribe and potentially strip him of his rental license. He settled. The check was for $12,000, $10,000 for the wrongful eviction, and $2,000 for my legal fees. I held the piece of paper in my hands. It was just paper, but it felt heavy. It represented the first time in my life that someone had paid for hurting me. I deposited it into a high-yield savings account that no one else knew existed. I called it my fortress fund. If the world ever tried to pull the rug out from under me again, I would have a cushion of my own making. While I was building, my family was eroding. The banking freeze I had initiated regarding the forged signature had triggered a domino effect. Noah told me that the bank had flagged Low Country Vanco as a high-risk entity, without the duplex as collateral, and with a fraud investigation pending regarding the loan application. My father's financing fell through. The fleet of new vans he had bragged about never arrived. He lost a major contract with a local tourism board because he could not prove he had the capacity to handle their volume. I watched it unfold from a distance. My father's Facebook posts shifted from photos of him standing next to luxury vehicles to vague, angry rants about government overreach and how banks were killing small businesses. He never admitted fault. He just complained about the weather while he stood in the rain he had summoned. My mother texted me on a Sunday night. "Bella, this has gone on long enough. Your father is stressed. His blood pressure is up. You have made your point. Can we just meet for coffee and stop this legal nonsense? You are tearing the family apart." I looked at the message. A month ago, it would have crushed me. I would have felt guilty for his blood pressure. I would have driven over there to fix it. Now, I just felt tired. I typed back, "If you want to discuss the property or the fraud investigation, please contact Noah Kendrick. If you want to have coffee as my mother, you need to acknowledge that you paid to have me evicted. Until then, there is nothing to say." She did not reply. Brielle was quieter, at least directly. She had blocked me on social media. But Jules sent me screenshots. Brielle was posting daily inspirational quotes about cutting out toxic people and how success breeds jealousy. "Some people can't handle your light." She wrote over a picture of herself drinking a latte. But the reality was less photogenic. Noah had heard through the grapevine that Luxhaven Property Group had placed her on administrative leave pending an internal review. It seemed that my lawsuit against Mr. Halverson had named her as a co-conspirator, and legal documents tend to find their way to HR departments. She wasn't fighting off jealous haters. She was fighting to keep her license. One evening, I sat on the front porch of the duplex. It was late October, and the Savannah heat finally broke, leaving a crisp breeze that smelled of the marsh and drying leaves. I had placed Grandma Evelyn's old rocking chair back in its spot. I had found it in the garage, covered in dust, shoved behind a pile of my father's old golf clubs. I rocked back and forth, listening to the crickets. The house was quiet. For 4 years, this porch had been a stage for my parents to perform their version of success. Now, it was just a porch. I thought about the anger that had fueled me for the last few weeks. It was fading, replaced by a strange, quiet sorrow. I missed the idea of a family. I missed the fantasy that I had people who would catch me. But I realized that holding on to that fantasy was what had kept me trapped. I was not punishing them. I was simply letting them experience the natural consequences of their own actions for the first time. I had stopped being the buffer. I had stopped being the sponge that absorbed their mess. I looked at the empty street. I didn't take revenge. I whispered to the empty air. I just stopped enduring. My phone buzzed on the railing. It was Noah. "Isabella," he said. "We need to have one final meeting, tomorrow morning at 10. "Is something wrong?" I asked, sitting up straighter. "Did they file a countersuit?" "No," Noah said. His voice was grim but satisfied. "Quite the opposite. Your father's attorney called me. The fraud investigation regarding the van loan is escalating. The bank is considering referring it to the district attorney. Your father is terrified. He wants to cut a deal to keep himself out of criminal court." "What kind of deal?" "The kind that ends this permanently," Noah said. "He is ready to sign everything: the release of claims on the house, a formal statement regarding the forgery, and a binding agreement to cease all contact and financial entanglement. He is ready to surrender to save his own skin." I looked up at the ceiling of the porch, painted haint blue to ward off spirits. "Okay," I said. "I will be there." "Bring a pen," Noah said. "You are going to want to sign this in ink." I hung up. I sat there for a long time, rocking in my grandmother's chair, waiting for the morning to come. The war was over. All that was left was to sign the peace treaty and walk away from the ruins. The conference room in Noah Kendrick's office was silent, but it was the kind of silence that screams. On one side of the mahogany table sat my parents and Brielle. They looked less like a family and more like defendants waiting for a verdict. On the other side sat Noah and me. Between us lay a stack of documents that was about to dictate the rest of our lives. My father spoke first. He tried to muster the bluster of the patriarch he had played for 28 years. "This is ridiculous, Bella. Dragging us into a lawyer's office? We are your parents. We can handle this at the dinner table." "There is no dinner table anymore, Dad," I said, my voice steady. "There is only this table." Noah leaned forward, interlocking his fingers. "We are here to discuss two matters. The first is the fraudulent loan application submitted to Low Country Commercial Lending using Isabella's forged signature. The second is the professional misconduct of Miss Brielle Brooks." Brielle scoffed, crossing her arms. She was wearing sunglasses indoors, likely to hide the fact that she hadn't slept. "My job has nothing to do with this. I helped my sister out. That is personal." "That is where you are mistaken," Noah said. He slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a bank statement. "We traced the source of the $1,000 you paid Mr. Halverson. You didn't pull it from your personal savings. You transferred it from the Brooks Family LLC business account, the same account your father uses for his tour company." My father stiffened. "So?" Brielle challenged. "Dad authorized it." "Exactly," Noah said, his eyes gleaming. "That account is currently under forensic audit because of the loan fraud investigation. By using business funds to bribe a landlord to perform an illegal eviction, you didn't just commit a personal tort. You committed funds mismanagement and implicated your father's business in an act of commercial bribery." Noah paused for effect. "And because the audit is thorough, the investigators flagged that transaction. They contacted the other party involved. That would be Mr. Halverson, and to save his own skin. Mr. Halverson provided an affidavit confirming that Brielle Brooks, a licensed property manager with Luxhaven, solicited the eviction." Brielle went deathly pale. "We sent a copy of that affidavit to Luxhaven's compliance officer yesterday," Noah said calmly. "You did what?" Brielle shrieked. She stood up, her chair scraping violently against the floor. "You sent it to my boss?" "They have a strict code of ethics," Noah replied, unmoved. "Bribing landlords is generally frowned upon. I believe they call it gross misconduct. My sources tell me your termination letter was drafted this morning. You are not just suspended. Brielle, you are uninsurable." Brielle collapsed back into her chair. She looked at me, her mouth open, but no words came out. The superiority, the arrogance, The tough love lecture. It all dissolved. She wasn't the successful sister anymore. She was a liability. Now, Noah said, turning his attention to my parents. Let us talk about the forgery. It was a mistake, my mother blurted out. She was twisting a handkerchief in her hands. We thought Bella would agree. We just signed it to speed things up. That is called a felony, I said. And the bank is not interested in your intentions. They are interested in the law. They are preparing to refer the case to the district attorney, identity theft, bank fraud. If that happens, Dad, you are not just losing the business. You are looking at prison time. My father looked at me. His face was gray. For the first time, I didn't see the man who intimidated me. I saw an old man who had built a castle out of playing cards and was watching a breeze blow it down. What do you want, Bella? He whispered. I took a deep breath. I pushed a document toward them. It was thick, bound in blue paper. This is a settlement and release agreement, I said. It states 3 things. 1, you admit that the signature was a forgery and you accept full liability for the debt, releasing me from any obligation. 2, you agree to vacate the premises at 1402 East 37th Street within 7 days, leaving it in broom-clean condition. 3, you agree to a permanent cease and desist. You will never use my name, my credit, or my identity for any purpose ever again. And if we sign? My father asked. If you sign, Noah answered, Isabella agrees to withdraw her formal complaint of identity theft with the credit bureaus and will not cooperate with the district attorney's prosecution, which will likely cause the criminal case to collapse due to a lack of a complaining witness. We treat this as a civil dispute that has been resolved. You are kicking us out, my mother cried softly. In 7 days? You have the van, I said, and I hear Brielle has a nice apartment. Maybe she can host you. She is always talking about how family should help family. I looked at Brielle. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Sign it, I said, or I walk out of here, and the next person you talk to will be a detective. My father picked up the pen. His hand was shaking. He didn't look at the contract. He just looked at the signature line. He signed. Then he passed it to my mother. She cried as she signed it, her tears leaving small wet spots on the paper. Brielle didn't have to sign, but she watched them do it. She watched them surrender. It is done, Noah said, pulling the papers back. You have 7 days. I stood up. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't look back. I walked out of that office and into the bright Savannah sunlight. And for the first time in 28 years, I didn't feel the weight of their expectations on my shoulders. I felt weightless. 1 week later, I stood in the hallway of the duplex. It was empty. They had taken everything. The furniture, the curtains, even the light bulbs from the hallway. It was petty, but it didn't matter. The space was mine. I took a brand new deadbolt out of the box. I unscrewed the old lock, the one my father had installed, and threw it into the trash bag. I fit the new mechanism into the door. It clicked into place with a satisfying, solid sound. I walked to the mantel in the living room. It was bare. I reached into my bag and pulled out a framed photograph of Grandma Evelyn. I placed it in the center of the shelf. Next to it, I placed a folded piece of paper Noah had given me from the trust file. It was a letter she had written to me years ago, intended to be read only when I took ownership of the house. I unfolded it. Her handwriting was shaky, but the words were fierce. My dearest Bella, if you are reading this, it means you finally stood up. I know you have a heart big enough to carry the world, but you must remember one thing. You were not born to be a mattress for other people to land on. You were born to be the house. Strong, standing, yours, love, Grandma. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. I wasn't sad. I was proud. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a notification from my bank. The settlement check from Mr. Halverson had cleared. Then another notification. A direct deposit from Juniper Desk. Then another. A rental application for the downstairs unit from a young couple with excellent credit. My family was somewhere else, scrambling to find a new host, blaming the world for their misfortune, their perfect image shattered by the very bribe they thought would save them. They had tried to teach me a lesson about the real world. They succeeded. They taught me that I didn't need them to survive. I looked around the empty room, filled with golden afternoon light. "I am home," I whispered, and this time, no one could tell me to leave. So, if you were me, would you call this revenge? Or would you just call it self-defense when you finally decide to stop being the one who gets sacrificed? Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please comment your country or city down below. Let's see how far this story has traveled. If you enjoyed this journey, please subscribe to Morgan Revenge Stories. Hit the like button and smash that hype button so we can share this story with even more people. See you in the next video.